Good morning. Happy Monday. It's sunny here. I hope it's sunny wherever you are when you're doing this. It makes a difference, doesn't it, having a sunny day? We're going to start with rolling feet. So you can get either a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, or Mary's got cork balls, or a rolling pin, or a dowel, or a water bottle, anything that's a cylinder that, you know, that you can roll. You're not going to put all your weight on it. We're just going to roll one foot and then the other foot and get a sense of an awareness through the soles of the feet. So today's class is a class we're going to build towards a pose called Natarajasana. And this is by request. And the person who requested it actually isn't here live. Well, we're doing it anyway. So Natarajasana is a dancer pose. And it's a combination. If you don't know what it is, it's you're standing on one foot, on one leg. You have one leg behind you. This is why we needed the belt or the strap. It's a back bend and it's a bit of a forward bend as well. So it's a balance. It's got all these things happening in it all at once. And it's a very complex pose. And someone invented this. Someone requested this. And here we are, like looking at how do you do a complex pose? And oftentimes it's presented as and stand on one leg, kick your other leg up, grab your ankle, and lift. And there's very little instruction on how to find not just stability in the pose, but also how to thrive in it, not just kind of hang on and, oh, Sawyer wants the ball under Dean's foot. You might have to give him that one and no, he wants that one. So here we are, we're rolling. For those of you who've just joined us, we're rolling our feet. This is a class today moving towards Natarajasana or dancer pose as requested. And here we go. I'm going to break it down as I often do, poses, to break it down to see that even though it's complex, it doesn't have to feel complex. And not to say I'm going to simplify it to make it less complex. We're going to get down to what exactly is happening in the pose so that we can figure out how to be in it, how to create stability. And a big part of that is the awareness of the soles of your feet. As you know, I'm a big proponent of foot awareness, and we'll definitely work with that today. Where are my words? I don't see Deb from Calgary yet. No. No guessing on who requested it. If the person wants to say, they can say it. It's them. But otherwise, we don't want any blaming or shaming or So I don't know about you, but I've just been doing one foot and I've been working the whole sole of my foot, feeling where I have sticky parts, where I have maybe a little tender, little thicker feeling. Maybe where I want to spend a little bit more time putting a little bit more weight just to loosen it up. I also want to have some awareness around my toes. So not just the fleshy part of the sole of the foot. I want to be able to wiggle my toes. It always amazes me. I've been able to do this my whole life, and it used to gross my sisters out. But it amazes me when people don't have the ability, don't have the connection to their toes to move them and separate them. So you can use whatever you've got, lean your toes over and try to get them to separate and move. Because when your toes can move, you're starting to move muscles in the soles of your feet that also go up through your ankle and help create stability for your knee. Okay, so let's stop on that foot and just stand and notice. If you've been switching, that's okay. I didn't exactly give you that instruction, but I think it's helpful to just do one side and then have a comparison, not just of your foot, but just first start with the awareness of your foot and then go up that whole side of the body, whole leg up through your hip and say, what does it feel? Does it feel different? Am I aware? Can I tune into differences between the two sides? I would even say, if I close my eyes, I can focus better and I can feel just more of a softness even through my head on that side in my eye. And then let's switch to the other foot. And if you've been switching back and forth, it's okay, just keep switching. So, okay, that backfired. Dean was sneaking out. So I bring this practice to you today because of, you know, because of the way things are right now, and we're living in a very complex experience. And there's a lot of information and sometimes conflicting information coming from different places. So how do you sort out something that's complex and might not be true or might be true? How do you figure that out? I think you go a lot with your own experience and your common sense. And in terms of moving forward too, we listen to reputable sources. Not so sure social media. It's full of reputable sources. Well, especially if you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, watch The Social Dilemma, and you'll see why you're getting the things that you do in your social media feeds. Just take this one. Just take his. He did steal the ball. Okay. It feels like we're cutting this side a little bit shorter. We'll go just for another 30 seconds or so. What a great meditative practice. I'm also noticing that as I'm rolling this leg, or this foot, this leg is working. My gluteus muscles, my medius and minimus and piriformis are doing a lot of work to stabilize my balance here. So just for a moment or two while we're doing this, tune into your standing foot and how it's placed on the floor. You know, we're so focused on the sensation we're creating here. What about this foot? And I think we can break things down and become more aware and feel like things don't have to be complex when we can access more of a subtle experience. But we're not totally used to that. Okay, so let's come off then again and stand. And this time I'd like you to stand, look at your feet, and set them up a distance that feels comfortable through your legs and especially in your pelvis. So your leg bones come up, as I've shown you before with Yorick. I'll bring him over. Your leg bones come up from the foot up through the leg, and then they do the thigh bone comes angled back into the hip socket. So we want to look to see what feels comfortable according to the back of the pelvis. What do you feel back here? If you bring your feet really close together, what does it feel like back there? If you take your feet really far apart, as wide as your mat, what does it feel like? And then where in between, where on that spectrum do you want to stand to be in a place where you feel balanced? You know, this is shifting. We're going to be shifting from standing on 2 feet to 1 foot. So let's see what it feels like to feel symmetrical first. That's the other thing that pose is. It's asymmetrical. So this pose is symmetrical. Okay, now that you've set your feet up where you want them, look to see where your feet are in relationship to your knees. I'm just going to send a message. There, John's calling me. Lush. And twice now. And look to see when you bend your knees, where do your knees go? What feels like alignment for you? To turn your feet out slightly? Do your knees go over the center of your ankle when you turn your feet in a little bit? Where is it that's going to be optimal for when you're standing? And then once you find that position, sometimes slightly turned out is beneficial. You can change it. You can mix it up and see what works. What do I feel in my knee and when? And then look down at your feet again and look to see, are both feet landing the same way? Like I look down at my feet and I see that on my left foot, my arch is a little dropped lower than on my right foot. So I have a little bit higher arch, I could say, on my right foot. I feel like when I look at what I see, I feel like there's more weight on the inner edges of both my feet. So that's my experience. So if you look down and see what's different, what's the same, where's your weight, I see my right toes doing a little bit more gripping than my left toes. And if you have socks on, it's going to be hard to see. So I would encourage you to take your socks off here to see your feet. And then let's try to rebalance. So rebalance in a way that you have weight more distributed, I'm going to say, through your big toe base, your baby toe base. And what I mean by big toe base is the ball of the foot. So the ball of the foot is really just the toe joint, the first joint. And then the baby toe has one too. All of the toes have them. But I'm looking at those two. And I'm going to say, for argument's sake today, the center of the very back of the heel. We'll just use that as a point of reference. So big toe base, baby toe base, and the center of the back of the heel. And when you do that, then look down and see, did it change the shape of your foot? Did that reorganize? For me, it did this lifting of my inner ankle. I will move faster, I promise. Right now, this is laying the groundwork so that we know how to be stable when we go into this very complex pose. So can you look and see, oh, it didn't actually do anything at all. So what do I need to do to try to bring more balance to my feet and try to find that action? It might be different on the left than it is the right. And then once you have that, if you're okay to close your eyes, close your eyes. And from your feet, if you're not okay to close your eyes, just look somewhere ahead of you that is eye level. And if you can, just a soft gaze. So I'm feeling, as I close my eyes, I can feel the weight in my feet. And I feel like I have a little bit more weight in my left foot than my right. So I'm going to shift back over to be level again, to be more balanced, which I wouldn't have known that if I didn't do that work with my feet and close my eyes. For me, that's what I need. And then have the awareness of your legs traveling up. Remember that angle back into the hip sockets. Notice where your pelvis is. We've done this before. We're just kind of checking in, bit of a body scan. Where's your pelvis in relationship to your feet? Is it more over the front of your feet? Are your knees more feeling like there's pressure at the back of them? This would be this sort of a situation where my pelvis is forward. I've got more of a hyperextension of my knees, and I've got my pelvis pushed forward. And when I say that, you can open up your eyes to peek. Or is it more like this, where you're moving your hips back? You've got more of an arch in your back. Well, we want to be able to deal with the structure of your body, but we don't know necessarily if it's the bony structures that are that way or the fascia and the muscular structures that are that way, that have put it that way. So once you feel where, okay, my pelvis feels like it's it's connected to my feet. It's balancing on top of those two sticks and more than two sticks, but down, and I haven't changed what I'm doing with my feet. Then come up a little bit higher and find the connection between your rib cage and your pelvis. Now I like to do this, put my fingers on the top of my front bones of my hips and my thumbs on my rib cage and kind of get a sense of, okay, if they come closer together, I'm rounding my back more. If they are moving further apart, I'm going to feel an arching in my back. So you can play with that a little bit. And then find where you don't feel like you're rounding your back or arching your back. And at that point, there's probably a little bit of sense of tone in your abdomen, your low belly, that is working to stabilize you. And then one step higher up is that darn head that often comes forward. So once we've established where the rib cage is, where are your shoulders? I've said before, your arms belong to the back of your body. So can you have them fall in a way or hang from your body in a way that they're more connected to the back and falling off the back of the body versus falling off the front of the body? And then see if there's a place to balance your head. I've worked with this before, taking the top of the throat back and up, which gives potentially a little bit of lift to the chest. And a sense that I'm balancing my head right on top of my pelvis, right on top of my feet. And then once you have that, just notice as you're standing here, I'm going to be quiet just for a moment, and notice how your body is moving to stabilize you. This is a pretty complex thing that we do to stand on two little feet. It feels simple though, because we do it all the time. We've done it since we were probably 1 year old or earlier. Notice when you're standing how there's subtle movement. Subtle shifts in your feet. It's like not even aware that we're doing it. Your body's just doing this because it wants to stay stable. It doesn't want you to fall down, your nervous system. And then as you're standing here, just another minute or so longer, see if it's possible to become more connected to your feet and the alignment of the body in a way, and your breath in a way that brings you even stiller. Just a little bit more stillness, less of that moving around without rigidity. And then just a little bit more still. Feel a quieting happening within. Notice if you're afraid to breathe. Just 10 seconds longer. And then open your eyes if they're closed. What a great meditative practice to stand and simply observe how your body is trying to keep you still. So now we're going to stay here. Keep checking in with your feet. Take your arms up and let's do this, the pendulum swing. Just to start to bring some movement to the shoulder joints. How high you go, up to you. Boom, boom. Notice what happens in your feet as you're swinging. If it's too much, don't go so high. Okay, and then end up here. Take your hands like this, palms turning forward, elbows bent. Hold on to your right wrist. Lean over to the left. I'm mirroring you. Spin your palm up. So we've got the shoulder plugging in, but we've got the forearm turning this way. Notice what that does for your shoulder joint, your shoulder girdle. And you can play a little bit. Do I want to turn? Do I want to stay here? When I shifted like this, where did the weight shift in your feet? For me, as I shift this way, it's shifting into my outer left, but it would be your outer right. That's what it feels like to connect the outside edge of the right foot. At the same time, I'm offering some space here to the side ribs, my armpit. You can bend your legs. There's no reason you can't bend. Turn, reach, open, breathe, and then let's come down, pendulum. And then back up. As we come back up, pause here, feeling the weight in your feet. Rebalance. Hold. Shoulder stays back. Palm turns up, forearm turns up, and then we start to open this side of the body, shifting your weight. Like any pose, it's kind of like Tadasana. We were just standing in Tadasana and feeling and noticing. Big breath into the side of the body. Maybe you want to go more into the back. Notice that if when you do turn like this, do you feel a sensation in your knees? Are you turning your knees or are you turning in your body? Can you keep your knees facing forward as you do this? Or is it your pelvis that's turning? Tune into the sensations that you have going on in your body. And then come back up. Last time the pendulum swings. Maybe it's just right here. I get my cheat sheet here. What did I say I was going to do next? Okay, I know. So then bring your arms down. One more thing standing here. Bring your hands to the top rim of your pelvis. Because there's a forward bend involved here, you can reposition your feet if you need to have a little bit of movement in your feet, since we didn't. And then reset up so that you've got your left foot on the ground, and we're going to lift the right heel away from the ground. So take your time to find how you're centered and symmetrical and all those things all the way up, and then your heel lifts. So now we've shifted the weight a little bit. It's no longer on your right heel, but we still want to maintain the same connection to the standing foot until we can move towards lifting a toe. For me, I feel like I've shifted more weight into my outer edge of my foot, which I think is okay because I need to be balanced. So does that feel like it's a balancing effort with my foot? And then straighten your leg out, your right leg. Keeping your leg connected to your body, start to tip forward. So when I say that connected to your body, I mean in line with your body. So leg goes forward, almost as if I'm about to walk. So I'm pivoting around my left hip joint. The right hip joint isn't moving. I'm not swinging my right leg. I'm pivoting around my left hip joint. Does that make sense? Thumb up if it makes sense. The focus is the left hip joint. I didn't see too many thumbs up, but I'll go with it. That means your head goes with your spine. And I'm starting to really feel the muscles of my foot, my left foot and my ankle and my outer hip on the left side as I do this. These are the ones I want to connect with when we go into a standing balance, when we go into Natarajasana or dancer pose, and then stop in the middle. Stand, rebalance symmetrically. Notice Lots of information happening on that side of the body. And then let's go the other side. Same thing. Notice your standing foot. Heel lifts first on your left foot. Then when you feel like you've shifted your weight without defaulting into, pressing down through your arch or gripping with your toes, then your leg comes out. Lean your body back. So you're keeping your body. I'm picturing that Keep on Trucking cartoon, like this is a big leg coming forward, a foreshortened leg in art terms. And now the action is around my right hip. It's around your right hip. I'm not moving my left leg. The relationship between my left leg and my pelvis and my body is not changing, but I am pivoting over, so starting to come into a bit of a forward bend and then a bit of a back bend. I shouldn't even say that. It's not even a back bend. I'm just moving into hip flexion on the right side and then a little bit of hip extension. And I'm feeling the work from my foot, my right foot up through my leg. Nothing's happening on this side, other than, stabilizing through the core. Notice when your foot wants to lose a connection, the big toe base, baby toe base, center of the heel. Maybe you have a little bit more weight on the outer heel, the outer edge. That's going to help your piriformis muscle that goes from your hip to your sacrum, the back of the pelvis. Okay, and then let's come back into center. And stand and notice again. Okay, here we go. So if you're not at the front of the mat, come to the front of the mat. Have your blocks there too. Just in case. This is just in case you need them when you come into a forward bend. Or I should say when you come into a lunge. I'm going to move them back here a little bit. So I'm standing here. Pick up your right leg, similar to what we just did. Switch your weight into your left leg. Start to take your leg back so it's hip extension first. I'm moving my right leg, not my left leg this time. So that starts the movement and gluteus muscles engage. So just notice that. Hold that here without leaning your body forward. So we're moving the leg back without moving the body forward. Take a couple of breaths. Hands to the top rim of the pelvis, maybe a good idea. Then start to bend your left leg. As you bend your left leg, start to bring your body forward. Keep your weight, though, in your left heel. Notice when you start to want to grip with your left toes. And then come back up. We'll do 2 more times, and we'll actually step back into a lunge. So this leg goes back first. All actions that we need in Natarajasana. Then this is leaning, or this leg is bending. Left leg is bending, body's leaning. So it's not just on the third one, I'm going to actually have you start to reach back with your right foot. So here we go. Right leg goes back, bend, lean forward, and we're countering. As we lean the body forward, I'd like you to reach your right leg back, 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 and then land your toes. Take your arms now and reach them back behind you. Look at the position your front knee is in relationship to your foot and bring it. You can slide your right foot back until your left knee is more vertical here. Just want to help distribute the weight more evenly. We've clasped hands behind the body, roll your shoulders back, and lift up through the front of the body. Look at the relationship you have between your pelvis and your rib cage and your head. And you can play a little bit. What does it feel like to move my arms more towards straight? Maybe lift them up higher, stretch them down further. This is an opening through the front of the chest and a contraction, squeezing through the shoulder blades here. Okay, one more breath. Looks pretty good. And then release your hands, bring them down to your blocks, and slide your right foot back a little bit further. So now we're in a low lunge. Pause here. All good stuff, waking up a lot of muscles here. I'm leaning onto my blocks, which is totally okay for this point. And then slowly, keeping your front knee where it is, slowly lower your right knee. Take time coming down until it touches the ground. If you need a support under the knee, like a blanket, go grab one. Shift your blocks to where you feel is the right distance for you to go back and forth between coming back this way and coming forward. And because I want to work a little bit with ankle flexibility, ankle mobility, keep your foot down instead of lifting it up like this. The goal here is not to straighten your leg. There is no goal. It's a direction. And if there is any goal at all, or a criteria, it's to keep your spine as neutral as possible as you do this. So a couple of things that we're doing, we're working through ankle mobility, probably a little bit through hamstring length. And we're keeping it pretty low right now. We might be feeling some releasing, lengthening of the hip flexors and quadricep muscles on the back leg. But I'll also invite you to take your hands away from your blocks when you come forward and lift up. And then come back down when you come back down. So hip and extension here. As we're moving through this, again, pay attention to the relationship of your thigh bone to your pelvis, to your rib cage. When you come up, does this space open up? Can we be a little bit more quiet with the movement of the rib cage? We'll do one more after that one. One more right here. And press down through your feet, your front foot and your back knee. Push your feet away from each other and see if there's room to come off the floor. Where's the stabilizers in your body? Notice if you had to use any kind of momentum to get there. Then come forward, hands to the blocks, come forward, step forward, come on up. Lift up, breathe, getting everything ready for this pose, everything that you're doing, even if you never even do the final pose. Look at everything that you're doing. You're really putting strength, an effort to strengthen the body and become more aware. Okay, here we go, the second side. So shift over to the right foot. Lift up the left and take it back. So this is hip extension. It's easy to go and lean the body forward. I'm only working with the movement I have available from the gluteus maximus that's right here. So if this muscle, like if you reach back, feel it to make sure that it's shortened. Feel what it feels like when your leg is straight or hanging down, and then feel how it engages and firms up when you take your leg back. Pay attention again to the rib cage pelvis relationship. Sorry, snoring. Then start to add in bending your front knee. We'll do that 3 times. So leg goes back. Stay weighted in your right heel as you start to bend and reach back through your left foot. And then 3rd time, back, bend, reach, and step. Bring your blocks. I think we did the high one first. Okay, we'll do the high one. We'll do wrap around again. So stay high. Once you've landed, wiggle your foot back so that you have enough space for when we do go down. Interlace your hands. You can go the opposite way that you just did. You want to be in a position here where you're meeting yourself where you're at. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a big step. I should go back and say that. It's where you're feeling maybe a little bit of opening or releasing through the front of the left thigh. So I'm doing a lengthening here. I'm going to shrug up a little bit and roll my shoulders back because I want to keep length through the sides of the body. If I try to pull back this way too soon, I'm not really putting my shoulder blades in place where I need them to be. I need them to be up a little bit higher. So I lift them up higher, then roll my shoulders back. Then I can play with what does it feel like? Yeah, lean forward if you need to. Find the place where you're centered over both feet. And then let's release. Go slow, bring your hands to the blocks. I'm moving my back knee back a little bit more and slowly descend it. Take your time. Let everything that's part of your foundation be part of your foundation. Cushion it if you need to, and then reposition your blocks. Maybe they can be lower. I don't know. It's up to you. I am looking to keep my spine as neutral as possible as I go back and forth. And I want to be able to shorten through the back of my ankle and lengthen through the front of my ankle. Just another opportunity to become aware of muscles of the foot and ankle. What happens? What I'm noticing, it's kind of interesting. I was playing with this in my own practice. That's why you're getting it. When I go back, I feel like I get a bit bigger arch in my foot. Then when I come forward, my arch, I lose my arch, and right here, the inner part of my heel, that fleshy part just in front of my heel, drops significantly to the floor. So instead, I want to try to keep my foot and the balance points of the big toe base, the baby toe base, and the back of the heel. I want to try to keep them doing what they're doing. So I'm not letting my ankle do any kind of leaning from one side to the other, because that's a pattern. That's probably how I walk. And then I wonder why I have pain in the back of my calf or tightness. My body's responding to the way I live my life. But it feels comfortable, feels normal. Much different experience when I'm doing it this way. I'm not so much focused on trying to stretch my hamstrings. And then we can add another layer of complexity by going from this position, whatever that happens to be, to coming forward. Can I still maintain that connection with my foot? So on this side, I'm asking you to be a little bit more in tune with what you're doing with your foot. Still be aware of the other sensations in the body. But it's often, I like to really just pick one thing to focus on. I do the same pose 10 times, and each time I'm focusing on a different element. And then take all of that information into my experience. And maybe there's some muscle memory there, the connection between the muscles. This is a lot more work for me, I'll tell you. Okay, last time. Bring your hands to the blocks, bend your front knee so it's vertical. And, oh, I think we had our hands to the waist. Yeah, we lifted up. Okay, if you need to, blocks, hands to your blocks if you need to. But we want this hip to do the work. We want to keep it in as we press down to lift up. Yeah. Like a lot of the times we'll do it this way. Notice where we need to add more awareness. And then come on up. I'll stand and notice. I'm getting warm, so this layer is coming off. I'm taking the layers of complexity of my clothing off. This is as far as I go. Okay, then let's come down and find a downward dog. Come onto your hands and knees. I want to do a little bit of movement before we come into downward dog. And it's really moving through your spine. So we've been keeping the spine fairly neutral, might have moved a little bit, but move through flexion, which is rounding up, and through extension, which is neutral, which is what we've been doing. You can go a little past neutral, maybe even drop into your shoulder blades a little bit, pulling them towards each other. I know I said squeeze earlier. I don't love the word squeeze in yoga. Sounds like a really, really aggressive or assertive move. Aggressive, maybe. Just gently, unless I say gently squeeze. So move through movement through your spine, maybe even move your hips around. I'm kind of happy for you to do a little bit of freestyling here. I even like, this is one I've been working with lately for my really flexible low back. This might be for you too, Mark, is to come back with the lower back rounding, mid to lower back, and then start to lift the heels of the hands off the floor until it's just your fingers. And then keep going, sliding, engaging through your abdominals in the front until your fingers float. So I'm just welcoming you to try it to see what it feels like in your body, and then come forward again. That's just one option. I'm working a lot on trying to release the tight fascia in my low back. That's my mission in life these days. Sometimes it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to release fascia that's been in a holding pattern for a long time. So I'm patient, but I've got to be consistent too. So if you think you can change something in one yoga class, I don't think so. Okay, so now let's find downward dog. Set up your hands like you've been working so meticulously setting up your feet so that you have action, you have a lift through the palms of your hands. Tuck your toes, pause and breathe. On an exhale, knees come away from the floor. Notice the effort has changed with the 2 knee points off the floor now. Then slowly shift your knees and your hips back. Shift again, we're moving around the shoulder joints. Shift again, moving back. Movement primarily is coming from the shoulders as we move the legs back and the hips back. And then start taking your hips up. Play a little bit once you're in downward dog. This is weight bearing for the shoulders, arms overhead. This is a big pose for the shoulder joint. Yeah, I would say go wider than you think you need to go. My shoulders aren't that wide, and I take my baby fingers right to the edges of my mat. In fact, they hang off a little bit so that we have a wider base here, narrowing up to the pelvis. We'll just take another 2 breaths in this pose. And then slowly we'll reverse it. So knees start to come down and forward, down and forward, down and forward till you're back in your table. And knees can land. Then come down onto your belly. Bring your hands underneath your forehead like this. And just be here breathing, feeling your body breathing. The front of the body is a little bit more restricted because you have the floor coming up to meet you. So invite your breath to go into the side ribs, into the back of your ribs. In this position, you might feel like you're a little bit more in a spinal hyperflexion, a little bit more compression. You know, what can you do with your pelvis to bring a little bit more length to your low back in this position, if that's what you're feeling. Okay, then take your arms where they are and move them forward. So now we're in this like Superman, Superwoman, super person position. Not quite. So the elbows are down. So moving towards a Sphinx pose. Press into your forearms. I'll shift back a little bit. Press into your forearms from your fingertips through to your elbows and use that to get your front ribs to come away from the floor. So when I say front ribs, the lower part of your ribs. So pressing into the forearms to get the low ribs to come off the floor. And notice if that pushed your pelvis into the floor more. Then just kind of be aware of it and see if you can find a way to get a little bit lighter. I'm going to show you. So front ribs here, top of the pelvis here. See if you can get lighter across the top of the pelvis, so it's not pressing into the floor. Does that make sense, Dean? Yeah. Okay, good. I have a live person I can check in with. Okay, so then we're holding that. This is an effort. This is an action that we want to be able to do so that we just don't move into the low back. So notice when you're holding this, what your low back feels like. I've got my front ribs and my top of my pelvis away from the floor. It's a lot of work in my shoulders. And then come back down. Whew. Bring your hands beside your chest, lift up. Bring your right foot forward. Come into a lunge. You can grab your blocks again. Walk your right foot out towards the right side and put your blocks on the inside. Cushion your knee if that's what you need. And then we'll allow the knee to go back a little bit. So instead of this, which might be, you know, how you're set up, how you're restricted, is it possible to take this knee a little bit further back? Where can you go without it being intense? Can this be on a bit more of an angle? Then we'll hold that and breathe. Checking in with the relationship between your pelvis and your rib cage and your low back. And remember the actions you just did when you were on the floor. So this part of the ribs moved back. This part of the pelvis moved back. That might just put you into a place that's more intense. You might need to walk a little bit more here. So we're going to keep that. Then take your left hand, take your left block over to the left, right off the mat. And we're just kind of checking in here. Lift your right arm up and sweep it back behind you. And as you do that, reach towards the back of the mat. Start to lift your back foot off the ground, just to get a sense of how connected, how far away are they. If you can take your foot, just take your foot here. If not, I don't want you to have a cramp in your thigh. Just check it out the distance and then bring it back down and just stay here, reaching back. Too late. Because if you're trying to shorten it, you're trying to attack the hamstrings from both or shorten them from both ends. And that's when the leg can go into a cramp. Okay, come back. Just kind of playing with it. Back into the center. Change legs. Left foot forward. It walks out to the left. I'm setting my foot up so that, again, when I bend my knee, I've got my knee pointing in the same direction as my foot. And then checking in with that, does that make my knee feel okay? Does that make my knee feel like it's twisting? Then check the angle of your left or your right leg. Where can it be that's not too intense? Then you take your right block out to the side and lean on it. Left arm comes forward and up. Circle it back and reach to the back of the mat. So we've got a rotation happening with a quadricep stretch. So we're already dialing up the complexity. Remember, we want to feel like it's not complex. What can you simplify here? Or what can you take away or make it so that it works for your body? This is an option. How far? Where's the connection? Maybe there's not. This is going to say, okay, I'm probably going to need my strap when I come into this dancer pose. Okay, come back. That was a bit because we had a rotation there in the spine too. Come back down onto your belly. A little chest opening. Take your hands off your mat. So I've taken them right off my mat in line with my shoulders pretty much, maybe slightly in front of my shoulders. So they're about, I don't know, 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches away from the edges of my mat. Then come up onto your fingertips and then dial them inward, just slightly. I'm going to say about 3 degrees inward. Then pressing into your fingerprints, pull your fingers towards each other so you create, I'm going to say daddy long legs hands. So we're not just leaning into the fingertips. Elbows are in line with each other. So I've got a line across from one elbow through the back of my body to the other one. Then do the same action we did before. Lift your front ribs away from the floor. Lift your front pelvis away from the floor, the top of the pelvis, and then roll your shoulders back and lift your head. Then roll back down, and I'll say it again. It starts with the front ribs moving away from the floor. Then the top rim of the pelvis moves away from the floor. It doesn't have to come off the floor, but it's getting lighter. And then shoulders roll back and head lifts up and come back down. If you're feeling the pain or pressure in your fingers, create more of that action as if you're holding on to a post or something that's sitting here. Last one, rib cage, top of the pelvis, shoulders, head, and back down. Bring your hands beside your chest, lift yourself up, get your blankets. I'm going to do a blanket folded in half and another blanket folded in half. I like to switch. I'm smoothing out the wrinkles in the middle. If you don't have this, a bolster will do. I know Suzanne's got a bolster there. A bolster, I'm basically making a bolster. So if you don't have blankets that are thick enough to go this high, and we can always change it too and make it lower if you need to. So just kind of playing with this a little bit here. Come down and lay down. I'm going to say this is the front because it's close to me. Maybe I shouldn't say it that way because really this is the front, right? Okay, so I'm changing the way I say it. This is the front edge. This is the back edge closest to me. I'm going to place my hip points close to this back edge like this. So come with me. Hip points on the front edge. Back edge, sorry. Oh, old habits die hard. And just kind of get used to what you're doing here. And consider the blankets are doing what I had you do last time. I had you lift your rib cage up and the front of the pelvis up. So we're going to keep legs down for now because I don't want you to go into cramps, but we're going to change that in a little bit. You can bring your hands down to wherever they help support you and work again from the front of the body using your hands and your forearms on the floor. I'm going to add another action, and the action is if you're trying to drag yourself forward. And instead of letting your shoulders come forward like this, as you pull with your forearms, see if your shoulders can go back and your chest can go forward. Then adding on to that, not just forward, because that can feel like it's jamming in your back. Once you start to take your chest forward, also start to take it as if you're trying to lift up. So this is the action in the upper body. So you can release it and practice it again, forward and up. And I have one more thing to do here before we add the strap in. As you're in the pose, see if you can find the muscles that would hold you in this shape instead of the blankets. So it's almost like you're trying to pull yourself away from the blankets just ever so slightly. And we'll hold for another couple of breaths while we're supported. Notice where your breath needs to go. Side, back ribs, front ribs, chest. Okay, and then come down. Hands beside you, lift yourself up. Get your strap or your bathrobe tie. It was a good suggestion, Mary. Put it around your left foot. Tie it around your ankle. With your strap where you can get it. So I got kind of the tail here. We're going to do this 2 ways, and we're going to do it 1 leg at a time only. So we're doing like a Ardha, Natarajasana, or half bow pose. So find your front hip points again. If the blankets need to come down lower, they're too high, then bring them down lower. If you can go high, if you can stay here, it gives you that feeling of what's happening, how you're moving your rib cage and your pelvis as a unit, coordinating that movement, and then we'll add in the lifting of the chest. So once you have it here, then reach back through your right leg. Totally okay if you have your toes tucked on that side, particularly if you feel it's a lot of pressure on your knee. You can have your toes tucked under, because that's the supporting side. That's the side that you'll be standing on in the pose. So with the strap, you can start, come down by your side. So follow your strap along to your side. And it's quite possible you don't need your strap, but if you could bear with me for this little exercise, so you can, sometimes using poses or using props will help you be able to be in the pose a little bit longer and kind of make some sense. It gives you some space too. So then you can feel a little bit more. So then start to bend your left leg. And when you bend your left leg, notice if you turned your foot in or your leg went out to the side. We want to be centered on that left thigh. We want to feel like it's like a Tadasana. It's in the same position as the right leg. You've just bent your left leg. That's all. And then walk your hand down to wherever you are able to without pain in your knee. Right arm is right here. We're going to do the same thing. We're not trying to get the heel into the bum or anything. We're just holding it here. And the reason we do the strap is because of that whole, if you shorten the hamstrings up top and near the knee, it's possible that it's too much for then the hamstrings and the Golgi tendon jumps in and says, nope, 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 nope. Okay, so then once you have that, then let's add the same action of pulling with the right arm, coming up, chest moving forward and up. Okay, you got it? Shoulder rolls back on the left. Couple of breaths here. I'm not letting this leg go out to the side. It wants to, but I'm getting a sense, I'm feeling the connection of my thigh centered on the floor. That's how I know it's not going out to the side. I'm not rolling out towards my IT band. Okay, and let's come back down. Lift up. Change sides. It's going to be a little bit of that. Doesn't have to be really tight. So if you tie a knot in your bathrobe tie or whatever you're using, a tie, make it so that you can slip it off with ease. Now you know, same thing, repetition. The other thing that this pose is, the dancer pose is, it's a binding pose. So it's a binding is when you hold one body part with another body part to leverage something. So either left toes tucked or pointed back. You can choose that left arm here, bend your right leg, reach back. So I'm holding on to my strap where I can, and then I'm going to create the actions. So the actions are to use my arm for leverage, and I'm pulling back, shoulders go back, chest goes forward and lifts up. This is the pose, minus the forward bend. The forward bend comes in when we start to, when we stand. So taking one level of complexity away. Well, two, when you consider balancing. Notice where you're balancing on the center. If you're balancing on the center of your right thigh, let me just come and peek for a second, see how you're doing. Yeah. And notice, even if you don't go any further, you notice what this pose is offering you here. Okay, I have one more version while we're on our bellies. So change one more time, come out of it, change sides. Or change for one more set, I should say it that way. And changing the hand position, changing the relationship of the arm. That's why we're doing some of the shoulder opening that we did. Okay, same thing. I'm centering both my thighs. I've got my pelvis lifted, my rib cage lifted. Right arm comes around. This time, though, let me think of how I want to do this. Okay, this time, take your strap out to the side. So I've got my palm facing up, like I've got a serving tray. Pretend you're serving hors d'oeuvres to someone to your left. You can say it that way, yeah. Then turn so your fingers point back and your elbow comes forward. So we go this way. You with me? Yeah, yeah. Then bend your knee, your left knee. Center your left thigh. I'm going to help with my other hand and walk my hand down to where I need it to be, because we're going to add one more element here. So as you use your right arm to pull back and your chest goes forward and up, you can use your left arm now to do the same action, but in the opposite direction. So your thigh, your foot presses back towards the end of the mat and goes up towards the ceiling. Without compression. Be where you can be in this pose. You got lots of stability here. And then come down. Don't have to hold it very long. Back bends, once we get into them, we don't want to hold them for very long. It's a lot. We could, but I don't think we necessarily need to. We could debate that if you wanted. Second side. Last side, and then we get off of our bellies. Then we go for the real deal. So I'm doing the serving tray on this side. You can even bend your leg first. Maybe that's a more optimal option. I've got the serving tray here. My elbow comes forward. It's a movement that I want to have happen in my shoulder to get here. I mean, you could absolutely put it on your shoulder and start here, but I like this because it works with movement of the shoulder. I also want to check once I'm here that I do have the center of my thigh on the ground, the right thigh in particular. Then my arm, left arm pulls back, so chest goes forward and up. Then I use my foot against the strap the same way. My foot goes back and up. Maybe it doesn't go very far. To this, we will add the forward bend, which will give you a little bit more wiggle room in your low back. Let me peek at you. Yeah, and then come out. How's your knee, Brad? It's okay? Yeah, okay, good. Your knee's not so good? It's everything else. Okay, so then come on up. Take your time coming up to stand. We're going to need the blankets probably too. Here, take mine and I'll do it. Did it slide out? Oh, because it was probably already done up. Oh. Okay, so get your chair. We're going to do a chair dog. Take your hands to the sides of the chair. Walk your feet back and wide. and send your hips back. So flexion in the shoulders, extension in the spine, flexion in your hips. A neutral pose. So it's not a forward bend, it's not a flexion in the spine, forward bend. Okay. And if you need something deeper, you can come and sit and come into a forward bend here, the seated chair, child's pose. I only use the chair because we've got it here. That little clicking of my earring against the microphone. Okay, so then we're going to use the chair. We want to kind of check in. Depends on how tall you are. I'm pretty short, so my knee just comes just above the knee, the height of the chair. So I'll show you where we're going, and then I want you to adjust with props. It could be blocks, it could be, you know, ideally probably a block, maybe even 2 blocks, if you're taller than me. I mean, depends on your chair too. This is a great option like this. Or I'm going to just put a blanket on here because I want it to be softer for my knee. I'm going to go like that. We'll just practice first. So we're going to use the chair to help us find this pose. So once you have it, stand with your chair to your left, to your right side, sorry. Then lift your right leg up. I'm mirroring you. Lift your right leg up and look at your bottom foot. I'd like them to be, so your left foot is behind. I'll show you where we're going and then you'll see. I'm trying to minimize the amount of twisting we do in the knee. So watch me first. I'm taking this foot, so I'm further back. My heel is here and my other heel is here. They're not in line with each other. On my standing leg, I turn my leg and my pelvis away first. Then I lift and I turn my heel. And as I do this, I let this leg come until I'm here. I'm just trying to minimize getting into the pose. If you have a different way you want to get in, I'm just minimizing the movement of the twisting of the knee to get in. So you can go ahead. So it was turning the foot and the leg, pelvis away, and then heel moves in. So I turn the front part of my foot and then the heel moves in. And then I'm here. Now you can kind of see where we're going, can't you? Now, depending on your chair, how high the back is, we're going to use the back if it's possible. So this will be the first step and see, what does it feel like to stand in balance? And you might want to turn around, Dean, the other way. What does it feel like to stand in balance here? And if you need a wall, take a wall. Let's come back to what the foot's doing. You know, that was lesson number 1 today. Big toe base, baby toe base, the center of the heel. Can you peek and see? Can you balance your whole body over top of that leg? And the leg that's resting on the chair, you know, what's happening there. So we're getting a sense of what this feels like. Now, I'm going to suggest, see if it's possible to move your knee back and your foot up to the back of the chair. If your blanket moves, you're going to have to fix it. Sure. Yep. If it feels too high with the props you've put on there, start to take some props off. So too high would mean your knee is probably going out to the side. It's a bit of a work in progress to find what the height is that you need. Now, if you feel it's really a push in the low back, like in a compression there, lean your body forward. We're already starting to go into a bit of a forward bend here over the standing leg. A few refolding of blankets and things. You know, it's not a precise science. It's going to be different things for different people. So you're kind of getting a sense of it, leaning forward while we're standing in it. We're going to try both legs, so you might as well be patient. Okay, when you're ready to come out in the most optimal way that does not twist your knees. So if it's coming forward and stepping or turning, You know, once we get into fixing parts of the body, it becomes a different story. Then we'll go the other side. I did it this way. I kind of like this, turning and turning. Then I'm there. Maybe my knee on the chair is way too much for my hip flexors. Remember when we slid the leg back in the lunge? Maybe it's way too much. And if that's the case, you're not jamming your low back, lean forward. Lean forward slightly to keep that length. Because this will kind of give you a sense of where you're going in the pose. And we pause here. I've got my standing leg straight. You could have it bent, but I think you'll have more stability with a straight leg and leaning your body forward away from the back leg. But it could be that that leg's too high. And this is all the kind of stuff that I play with in my practice. How I develop some of these things that I do. Look at your foot. Is your foot acting like a foot? And what the chair gives us here is time to look at the foot, feel what's happening in your foot, your leg, your hip, your low back, and go, okay, this is something like the shape of the pose. How do I feel here? What's happening? Yeah, you can absolutely lift your arm up. You can lift both arms up. Where I'm going with the arms is this, back here. So it means the strap's going to come into play again. But you can go like this. See how close you are to your foot? Nah, I'm not ever anywhere near. Okay, and let's come off in a very safe way. I'm going to lean forward and lift and step down. So if you found it was too much to have your knee on the chair, I'm going to have you turn your chair sideways. I'm going to just show that first, and then I'll get back to everybody else. So sideways means you're going to have your foot here, your strap. So everybody you can go ahead and put the strap on your left foot. But if you're turning your chair sideways, you're going to set up this way. Same. Whatever works to get into this so that your leg is here. And I'm going to suggest that because, this is why this chair is sideways, because I want my knee right at the edge. I want my kneecap off. And the strap here. Okay, so that's your version. In case this knee with the foot up is too high, if this is more accessible, then go for this. Otherwise, we are this way. See how it's not one size fits all? My goodness. I'm going to start with my knee and then turn and come up. Strap here. I'm going to lean forward because I'm feeling some compression, trying to keep upright. So I'm going to lean forward. So now I have the floor that's fixing my leg. So I can do this. I didn't have the floor, the ability to change that when I was on the floor. So I'm leaning forward. I feel the release in my low back right away. Awesome. This is the serving tray. Elbow goes forward. Hi ho, hi ho. It's off to work we go. And then take your other arm. Here's the first option. Other arm goes up and forward. And then find the lift through your low belly, the lift through your chest. And it's possible that you might start to bring your heel towards you. You might start to take your other hand towards the strap. And you might even lift off the chair. If you don't feel like you've got the support from your own body, from your own foot, stay on the chair. You're still getting benefit from the shape. Yeah, so you're playing with what you're doing here. Whoa, Brad, hold it, hold it. What? Look at your foot, see what's happening. You're losing your big toe base is what I'm suggesting. Keep your left big toe base glued. And then come out when you're ready. Questions, comments? Everybody's okay? Little teetering. Remember at the beginning, so before we go into the second side, remember at the beginning when we were standing and I asked you to become even more still and even more still and even more still? So use the chair to help you find that. Then see if there's a way to feel that as you transition into the more complex version of it. Remember, we're not making it simpler. We're finding a way to be in the pose from the center and like it's radiating, the awareness is radiating out. Okay. Set up how you want to set up on this side. So many options. If your chair back is high, it might be a challenge. Just see, like this is a great quadricep stretch. Lean forward slightly if you're feeling that pressure in your back. Come to a place of really feeling supported through your left foot. Big toe base, baby toe base, and the center of your heel. You're not leaning more forward to the front of the foot. So if your body's leaning forward, you're still maintaining the weight in your heel. That's pretty key, I think. Then once you have that, how still can you get in the support? Then start to do the serving tray, arm up. You can also reach back this way and stay here. There's no reason you have to bring your leg off the chair. But if you feel confident, remember the chest goes forward and up, leg goes back and up. Add in the degree of forward bend that you need to stay balanced in the front and the back. Have a keen sense of awareness in the sole of your foot. Notice if your right knee is traveling out to the right. Remember, we centered the thigh. Come back out when you're ready. Take your time coming out of the pose. Moving the chair. How do you feel? Like, oh, that's a lot of back bending. It's good. You feel good? Good, Susan, this is for you. That's good. I like it. Stand in Tadasana again. Notice what sensations you have in your body. And if you're standing here going, oh, I just need to stretch my back out, that's a really good clue that maybe you did too much. Not to say I won't let you stretch your back out. I'm feeling a sense of the back of my body having worked, but it's fatigue more than anything. Okay, let's come into either chair downward dog or downward dog on the floor or half downward dog. So we move from extension to lengthening extension. So now we're adding a little bit of traction. So it can be down or it can be up. If you have issues with shoulder mobility, down is probably a really great option because you get that ability. But see, I don't have to line my arms up with my body like I do with downward dog. For stability, I can be here and still push down and forward with my hands and take my sit bones back and up. But in downward dog, I'm more lining up, arms with body to make that line because I need to for the safety of my shoulders. Okay, 2 more breaths here. So I'll highly encourage you to redo the class. And when we get to the point with the chair, maybe pause and try one more time without the chair. Then let's shift back into any version of child's pose. So now you get your flexion. Now you get that release that might feel really delicious right now. And it might even help your nervous system kind of go, okay, that was a lot. And you think all those things I was reminding you to do, that's complexity. But practice, becoming more aware with the subtle, moving towards the gross, can give you a feeling of, I'm okay, even in the midst of something that's really complex and I don't understand. I'm okay not knowing what I don't know. Breath. If you can, find a way to expand it into the side and back ribs. If it's too much on your knees to be in child's pose, this is always an option. Sit on the chair and bow forward like we did before, or come onto your back, draw your legs in, rock. This is a pose of releasing. So if you're feeling pain, it's kind of not working for you. I don't need to sacrifice one thing for something else. So many messages. And then make your way over onto your back, and we'll do a rotation before Shavasana. You can really do any rotation that you like, and I know not everybody has their own way. I really am a big fan of doing the rotation where you bring your leg across your body. So I'm bending my left leg, pulling it across with my right hand, and I turn right onto my side and bring my knee down. The reason I like this is because it keeps my spine in extension. So the downward dog extension and brings me into rotation. I'm not worried about my left shoulder blade being off the floor because I have anchored over here and I've created the stable environment for my spine to be in rotation. It really needs to be in extension first. I have my hand behind my head, my left hand, my right hand stays on my leg. If there's any other version that you want to do, go for it. At the end of the day, you always have choice. When it seems like this is a complex situation we're all in, lots of information. At the end of the day, you can choose to really listen to what you need. What will bring you to a place of stability, of feeling okay, contentment, joy, whatever you want to call it. Stay as long as you need, as long as it serves you. You can decide how long, because it's you in your house, in your practice. You can stay in Shavasana way longer past when I finish the class. When you're ready, though, if you're ready, I roll to my side again to come out of my version, straighten both legs, and then just roll back. Here I am on my back again. I like to have just a moment of pause and reflection and awareness before I do another pretty big rotation to the opposite side. So I tune in. Do you want to have another chance to hug your legs in, rock, do what serves you. If you want to go right into a rotation on the other side, go ahead. Like, I'm giving you my experience, and I share that so I can hear from you too, that, you know what, that's not my experience. But okay, good, I learned from that. Come to the other side when you are ready. Left hand to outer right knee if you're following me, all the way over onto your left side until your knee comes down. I do a little shift of my hips backwards too, towards the right edge of my mat. My left hand is up behind my head, and I lean back onto my hand. And then I don't try to force anything. I don't try to force my right shoulder blade down. I just hold myself. This is binding again in a bound position. And I breathe into the shape of it, inviting the breath to go into as many nooks and crannies as possible. So it was Natarajasana, a dancer pose. Dancing, you watch like Dancing with the Stars or ballroom dancing, or dancing can be complex. My goodness, hip hop. They make it look like it's not because they practice. They know how to be centered within themselves. Okay, stay as long as you like. When you are ready, I roll back onto my side, straighten my top leg, roll back onto my back. And then you can get whatever props you might need. If you need to get up, maybe go right back onto your side again and get up from the side. Get whatever props you need to be extremely comfortable. I'm going to keep you just a few minutes over. It's 10:57 now. If you have to go, just lie for a moment. You have 3 minutes. I will always invite you to stay longer, though. There's not a practice that a physical asana practice that I do on my own that I don't lie down in Shavasana or sit in meditation after. Oh, Goose. Goose is replacing Sawyer. You got Maverick there too? No, just Goose. Just, okay. Maverick's watching. And as you settle in, take stock and notice, how does your body feel? You know, this is the pose for resolving. And so at first you might feel like there's a little bit of residual tension somewhere. You're feeling fatigue in your muscles maybe. But in this pose, in the course of being in this pose, does it release? That's a good sign too, that you're working within your zone in the sweet spot of challenging, but not too much. Hear the sound of my voice. If it feels right to you to move and breathe and stretch, you can. It feels like, oh, I want a few more minutes. And stay. Checking in. Was that long enough to resolve anything that you experienced? To let the practice settle into you, into your cells, into your brain, into your body? To let your mind come to a place of settling, and maybe even a bigger awareness around how you show up in the world. This is a really complex world we live in, that's for sure. And sometimes things aren't as black and white as they seem. Maybe it's acknowledging that things are more complex than we often think they are. It's not cut and dry, less judgment when we go that way, more compassion. You can see that this is more complicated. So for those of you who are sitting, bring your hands towards the center of your heart or your palms. If you're lying down, just stay there. You can have just an awareness of your heart center. And bow to the goodness within you. And seeing it as a light that shines on the goodness of all. Namaste.